would just sit, and sometimes I would say those things to myself, or I would have other things, but other times I would just feel the fact that I was anxious, and I would be conscious of the fact that it would rise up in me, and I would panic, and maybe my face would go red, or I'd start, my hands would start shaking, and I would just wait for it to go, so that I could learn to tell myself that, like, these things come and they're unpleasant, but they also go.
That is a clip from this interview with my friend Giorgia Catt, and she's going to tell us a story about an eating disorder, a story about autoexigence, that characteristic that keeps coming up, that self-demandingness, that tendency to put pressure on ourselves when it might not be entirely necessary, and the process of exploring her self-introspection to find out what her emotions are really like and how long they really last, and how maybe everything isn't such a big deal. She also talks about going to Thailand and expanding her horizons, using travel as a tool for healing to escape some bad habits or let go of some bad habits. So let's talk about that. If you do enjoy this episode, maybe you know somebody who's going through an eating disorder, or somebody who really needs to change their habits, introduce some kind of chaos in their life that's ultimately going to help them transform into something finer and newer and more brilliant. Maybe you'd like to share this with them and just send them a little message, give them a little reason saying, I think you might like this because, and tell them how it relates to their life. I would much appreciate it if you do that. That would help me get the word out about the podcast and also help me express myself in a greater way. So these positive messages, like the information that Giorgia shares in this interview, can reach a larger audience, and people can continue to increase their quality of life by having a look at their own mental world. That would be great. So thanks for doing that. Let's begin.
This is a beautiful thought.
I'm here with my friend Giorgia Catt, and she's going to tell us a story of adventure, traveling the world, introspection, and maybe triumph.
Yeah, definitely triumph.
Cool.
It's the best part of it.
Yeah. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah. No complaints.
Yeah.
Things are good here.
Good. So the story begins like 1 month before you leave Australia, I guess. So what was your life like at that point?
So I was living in Melbourne, which is my home where I was raised.
Yeah.
And I'd always been quite a high achieving student and held myself to a high standard academically. And as a result of that, I took on maybe a little bit too much, more than I could handle. So I was doing a double degree in law and psychology. I was doing a diploma of languages, and I was managing a café full time.
Wow.
Yeah. Which was great for a while. It gave me a lot of energy. It gave me a lot of purpose. But it didn't give me any time to think about anything. And as a result of this, I didn't have a lot of time to make friends, to maintain any of the friendships that I had kept. I didn't have a lot of time to think about my health. Or also, I was 19, 20 years old at this time. That's a important developmental time as well.
Yes.
That was my first couple of years at university. And I realized throughout that time that I wasn't taking enjoyment in anything that I was doing. I couldn't cope with my study load. My job was just getting stressful because it was just, I think each of these things in isolation would have been fine, but altogether it was just too much for a 19-year-old or a 20-year-old to handle.
Yeah.
And because of that, I kind of reverted to some, not coping mechanism, I don't know whether to call them that, behaviors that I had used in the past to make myself feel a little bit more in control of what I was doing, a little bit like to almost reward myself in a bizarre way, which I'll say in a minute, for doing doing what I was doing, which was restricting my eating. Yeah. So something that I don't know whether this is a well-known thing about eating disorders, but it's not always about people wanting to be skinny or thin or to fit a certain body type. It is definitely a big part of it. Yeah. But also I felt like there were very few things that I could do successfully, but I could successfully not eat something or only eat this little thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it seems to be a common theme about that. It's like when everything else in your life is out of control, well, at least I control my eating habits. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah,
exactly. And this was something that I had struggled with when I was a teenager, and I thought that perhaps I was over it. I just didn't think that it would happen again because it was such an uncomfortable and horrible experience recovering from that I was like, oh no, like I know that I would not do that again, but I maybe was in a little bit of denial or didn't think that what I was doing was a bad thing or that would lead to any consequences for myself.
Okay.
And when any human is undernourished, underfed, starving at a certain point, you don't think properly. You don't have enough of the proper nutrients or energy to feed your brain and help you to process information. So it becomes a horrible cycle of like, you're not able to solve problems. You're not able to think about things clearly. Your thinking gets very black and white as well, which then in turn feeds the symptoms of the eating disorder.
Right.
Yeah.
So what would your thought pattern be like in that case? It's like, if I eat this, then I've ruined everything, or how did that black and white thinking express itself?
It was more like, okay. So, it would be if I don't, if I do not get this done, I will not eat. If I do not obtain this score, I'm not allowed to do this. Mm-hmm. Then it became also in particularly bad times. I remember walking home because exercise was involved in this as well. I remember thinking about a route to walk home. Yeah. There was a long route. I knew how many calories that I would be burning, which is not a particularly healthy thing for.
By the way, which part of Melbourne did you live in?
I lived for a year in North Melbourne, and then I moved to Northcote. So it was over 1 year in one place, 1 year in the other. But at this time, I was in Northcote. Yeah. I was taking a route home, and there was construction work. And the whole time I was thinking, I actually remember I was like, what am I going to eat when I get home? Because I'd been successful that day. And I was like, oh, I'm going to eat maybe carrots with blue cheese or something. I can't, like a tiny little bit of blue cheese because it's strong and you don't need to eat very much of it to get a flavor.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about this.
Makes sense.
I don't know. I was, again, just constantly preoccupied with what I was eating. And I came to a roadblock. There was construction. And I remember I stood there for like probably 20 minutes. I did not know what to do. I couldn't move. I was like, I said that I was going to take this route home and it's blocked and I can't.
Oh.
And I was looking for a way to go like around it, but on the same road. And I started crying and I started panicking and I just couldn't see a way around this.
Wow.
Most other people would have probably just gone back a block and gone around.
Yes.
But I couldn't, I just didn't, I was like, I said that I was going to do this and now I can't. And that's going to make everything fall apart.
Wow.
So it was a lot of little things like this that ordinarily would not be a problem for anyone. And as humans, we're able to problem solve these things. Like it wasn't a big deal, but that last month before I left, everything became like that. If there was any sort of problem that got in my way, I just didn't know what to do because I was like, I had this one idea and it would not work, and I'd be like, it just sent me into a panic. So there were two major things that happened in the month before I left. One of them was that at some stage I realized that I needed help. I think enough people had kind of commented on my body. Enough people had reached out and sort of said, like, where are you? What are you doing? Are you okay? And I had not outgrown. I'd shrunken. My all of my clothes.
Resources. Yeah.
What's in my all my clothes were falling off me.
I see. I see.
Yeah. And I realized this one day that I was like, I can't get any smaller because this is how big my bones are.
Oh.
And they're not going to shrink. And I sat there for a while and I was like, I need to go to a doctor. Because I'm not capable of doing this myself.
So here's the thing. I think in that situation, a lot of people might go into denial about the situation that they're in. Why do you think you, in that moment, were able to accept what was happening?
I think it was because I've had just a couple of moments of being like, I don't understand how I can possibly be this miserable. It was this kind of incomprehensible moment where I almost felt very clear, but I was like, why am I this sad? This is what I have been like as a psychology student. That's kind of from my end goal was to be able to help people get out of this. And I was just like, these feelings are so strong and so horrible. And I don't understand what is going on. And like, how is this possible? And I think I had a moment like that when I was staring at myself in the mirror, just hating everything. And at that point I hated, my whole body. I hated that I was so skinny. I hated that I still had fat. I hated that I had, at that point, lost even more control about what I ate, how I looked about myself, what I could do. Because I could barely walk around places. I would faint if I would stand up because I was just so undernourished.
Right.
And I think I remembered having a similar feeling as a teenager before I kind of let my mom know. And me letting my mom know was winter time, and I was always rugged up in coats because Melbourne gets cold enough that you would wear a sweater or a jumper. Yeah. I sort of came out of my room without a sweater on, and let her see my arms and my chest, which were just like bare, just skin and bones. And that was when she was able to, I think that scared her enough that she was like, I am taking you to the hospital. So I felt the same way about that. I was like, I need to let someone know, but I am an adult and it has to be, no one's going to do this for me. I have to do it for myself. So again, this was in winter as well. And because I had no fat on me, I would get extremely cold. So I was rugged up in three jumpers and a jacket and all these socks. And I went to the university doctor and I was like, yeah, so I think that maybe I have started doing some old habits of mine from my anorexia days. And I'm a little bit worried about that. And I think that I might need some help for this. And he was a very old man. He just looked at me and he's like, well, do you eat? And I was like, yes, which was true. I would eat like very small things. Yes. And he was like, well, you don't look sick, so you're probably okay. We can talk about this another time. Oh. Yeah. And it was so hard for me to come there and say that. It just crushed. And also anyone who has dealt with a woman or a man who's had an eating disorder should know that it's very hard not to lie about what you're eating. Of course. It's just, you meet your friends. Oh, we're having dinner. Oh, I just ate. I'll just have this diet soda. He obviously didn't know anything about that. And wasn't paying much attention to what I was saying.
Right. Yeah, I do find doctors, maybe especially in Australia, or maybe it's a general trend around the world. They're like, in Australia, it's like they have their it's like they're paid by the government, and it's like piecework. So they're paid more if they get you in and out. So it's like, here, take this pill and see you later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wasn't given a pill. I wasn't given anything. It was just sort of like, you're probably fine. Eat an extra snack. And I was like, it just broke my confidence. So that was probably about a month before I left. And then, again, I got home in that same month, a couple of weeks later, I got home from work, and the university semester had ended. So I didn't have any classes. I didn't have any study to do. I got home and it was like 3:30 p.m. and I was sitting on my bed. I was like, I have nothing to do. And I don't have any hobbies. I don't have any friends. I didn't really watch TV. I couldn't really, it didn't come to me, or it wasn't something, I don't enjoy just sitting and watching. I didn't enjoy sitting and watching TV. I think it was because I told myself I was being lazy, but I was like, I've got nothing to do, and there's so many hours left in this day, and how am I going to fill this time? And I started crying on the floor, and again, I was there for a very long time. The same feeling was that I don't understand how I can be this unhappy. I do have, perfect life, I think, is not true, but like everything that I have no reason to be unhappy. Like, I have a wonderful family. I had friends. I have a job. I have plenty of money. I live in a wonderful place. I have all of the resources available to me, and I can't get up off the floor. And I lay there until it was dark. And what kept coming to my mind was like, I need to leave. I need to leave. I need to leave. I need to leave. And I became really frantic, and I was like, I don't know what to do. I went and poured myself a glass of juice.
Okay.
Stole the juice from my housemate. I was like, I need this. And I had not touched juice in years, but I was like, I need something that is going to help me think about what I can do. I drank this juice. And I was like, I'm gonna put some TV on to distract myself and think about what I'm gonna do. And the thing that was on TV was Anthony Bourdain's what was it? One of Anthony Bourdain's travel shows.
Okay.
And this particular
culinary travel show.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
This particular episode, he was in Vietnam.
Wow.
And I was watching it and just kind of mesmerized by how different everything was. And I watched the show for a little while, and I had decided, I was like, I need to go to Asia.
Wow.
And that same night, I again sat there. It was a long night. It was a lot of me just sitting there being like, oh, am I going to do this? I bought a ticket to Bangkok, and I was like, I'm just going to spend some time traveling around. I'd been to Thailand before. And that was another thing. I had been to Thailand before and also felt very at peace with myself. And I think that's not in a, how do I describe this? I just felt like I didn't need to be anything when I was there. I could just walk around and look at stuff. And that was a very peaceful feeling for me.
Well, I always think about, like, when I was in the temple in Thailand, the phrase you hear a lot, and it's not just in the temple, it's among Thai in general, they're like, up to you.
Yeah.
They're very not judgmental people. I mean, especially the monks, but even people in general, they're like, yeah, it's your choice, it's your decision. Very very relaxed in that sense.
So yeah, that feeling was very nice, and that attitude as well as I guess something that I would have recognized when I was there. So I bought this ticket for, it was maybe less than 3 weeks away. And something that hadn't happened to me in probably 2 years at that point was that I wanted to listen to music. I would never tell anyone to stop playing music or I didn't like the music that was playing, but I hadn't chosen any music for myself in a really, really long time. And that was because even now, I get distracted if I'm listening to music while I'm studying or working. But I played some music, and I felt really good. And I danced in my living room.
Cool.
And it was such a tremendous change to how I was feeling probably like 8 or 10 hours before that, being on my bedroom floor crying and being like, I don't understand this sadness that I'm feeling. So in those weeks leading up to when I left, I bought a teaching English as a foreign language course, and I did that, and it felt purposeful. My studies had not, I would do them. I would go through the motions. I would write these assignments, but I was like, what am I actually going to do with this law degree? I don't know. What am I going to do with this specific information that I'm learning now? But doing this, this course, that I was like, I understand what I'm learning. I feel like I'm quite good at going through this content. Whereas I also didn't feel like I was very good at law or psychology, actually. But so I was going through it. I felt good about it. I was like, this is something that I'm going to use. I knew that it would lead me to a teaching job or hoped that it would lead me to a teaching job. And that was another thing. Hope was not something that I'd felt in a long time.
Wow.
So I was like, I hope that this will do something good. And I believe that it will.
Here's a question. I mean, at that point, I mean, you're studying this double degree and you got this job in the cafe and everything. And it seems like you were just like, well, whatever, I'll just take off. Or how does that fit in? Because it seems like there's some piece that I'm not seeing.
So it was the end of the it was the semester. So I was on a break from the studies, and I went to the University of Melbourne. You're allowed to take time off. There's like a certain amount of time you can take off without like just leave of absence. And then there's you can take off a year or something if you just have to submit a form that's like, I need to take this year off to work, or like I've had some issues or something like that. You defer, that's the word. So I knew that I could come back if and when I wanted to.
Okay, that makes sense.
So I wasn't abandoning anything in that sense.
Just taking a break.
I thought.
And the cafe job?
So my boss is still a very good friend of mine today. And I had explained that he had known that my physical and mental condition was declining, but also when we talked about this years later, he didn't really know what to say, but I told him that I needed to go, and there were no hard feelings or anything. He was like, I think you need to, because you're not, like there's something wrong. And I remember him saying to me when I revisited Australia, he was like, I didn't know whether that was the answer, but also there didn't seem to be any other options. And also like, I guess as a boss, he can't be like, no, you can't quit. But
well, some bosses are like that, but that's so nice that he would be so patient and understanding and compassionate. So I still contact him occasionally now, and a wonderful person. Which again, I think contributed to the knowing that I had made a good decision. And contributed to the hope as well, just having someone who I cared about very much being like, I think you need this. And he'd also... Here's a dumb question for you. What does hope feel like?
That's hard to describe. It's excitement about the future.
Okay, yeah.
I think it feels like excitement about something that will happen, a sense of lightness and brightness about the things that, I guess it depends on the specific hope. But in this situation, it was more like I could approach my days with sort of brightness and excitement, and I would wake up and I'd be like, oh, this good thing might happen. This good thing might, good things are coming. Whereas before, I don't think all the time in your life you need to have a thing that's going to happen that's good. I generally have learnt that there is always something good that is coming. I don't always know what it is.
Yes.
I don't always wake up being like, yay, good things, unless it's like a specific thought. But I was able to wake up and think about things and have it like a happy anticipatory energy for Also, I think hope in a lot of the times that I've experienced it has been, there's also been a feeling of like opening myself up to possibility. Because you can be like, I hope that it doesn't rain today so I can go to the beach. That's a very kind of specific thing. But it's like, I hope that these events happen because I feel very good about waiting for these events, planning these events, thinking about them. It also opens me up to the possibility that perhaps these things won't work out, but other things will happen. And those things are not nothing. Those things are not bad. Like I'm just open, like I have hope that this thing will happen, but I'm also willing to accept and welcome anything else that happens along with that on the way or cool. As an alternative. Yeah. It was a really, really good feeling.
Yes.
Yeah. And I told all my family members about this too. So I told my dad about these feelings of hope, and he was just like, I had no idea that you didn't feel that before. And I was like, yeah, it's wonderful. But, and I told my mum as well, and again, she was very happy for me, but she was like, oh, but you're coming back, right? In 6 months, a year, you'll come back and you'll finish your school. And I was like, yeah, but I'm just going to wait till I'm ready. Sure. She was like, yeah, you're coming back. And the first year I was away as well. When are you coming back? But my dad, he was just like, do what you need to do. No, don't come back if you don't need to. Like, yeah.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. But then it kind of, for a little while it switched. My mum was like, you are so happy there, like stay. And then my dad was like, why don't you come back now that you're feeling better? Yeah. But now they're both totally... I have accepted that I am not frequently returning.
Yes. So what was it like to get, like the lead up to getting on the plane?
Well, I had to sell all of my things and get rid of a lot of stuff. I did the typical backpacky thing. Like I bought this huge backpack and I got to sort through all of my clothing and all of my possessions, and that's similar to moving house. I love going through my things and looking at what I need to keep and what I need to throw away or give away. So that was very cathartic as well, just being like, I don't need all of these things. It was a nice feeling of being able to leave like my expensive leather boots that I was like, I'm not going to need these in Southeast Asia. I wasn't going to need jewelry. I wasn't going to need all of these more material things that I thought would make me happy, which was something that I think a lot of people do to some extent, is buy things as a replacement for dealing with the feelings or something like that. And I by no means think that material possessions are bad at all. I love my material possessions, but I also really like being able to get rid of them.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So that was, and it was also, it wasn't a difficult process. Like I had some furniture, I had a lot of clothes, jewelry, books, CDs, things like, I don't know, electronics. And I never felt weighed down by owning these things, but it was very cathartic to get rid of them. And that's something that I actually speak to a lot of people about as I'm traveling, being like, I don't want to own things because, you know, it ties me down to a place. And I was like, I personally don't think it does. I think that you can get rid of everything that you have when you need to move on, when you want to move on.
Yeah. I do have that chip in my mind sometimes. And like, if I buy too much, then I'm stuck or something. But it's not really true. I don't know why I always have that feeling or that belief, like, if I have too much furniture, it's just such a chore to sell or something. It's not really.
Yeah, exactly. I speak to a lot of people about this, and I've kind of wanted to unpack it a little bit more, but that's maybe for another day.
All right. Sure.
Yeah, but so I got rid of all of my things. I had my backpack, got my passport out again, which felt really good. And I said goodbye to people, and it was, as soon as I bought that ticket, everything just became so much easier. It wasn't that it fixed the problems.
Okay.
But it gave me hope, energy. Maybe that's what it gave. That hope and all of those feelings gave me energy again to communicate with people, which I had trouble doing. And I was kind of able to eat again without these tremendous feelings of guilt and anxiety. And I was very busy during that time. And something that I noticed was that I would make myself a breakfast, and it was still a little bit challenging sometimes. But I would eat, and then I'd be like, oh, I have all of this stuff that I have to do. And it wasn't stuff that was schoolwork and essays and things. It was like, oh, I need to go and, buy a travel log, or like I need to go and submit these documents. I need to photocopy this stuff. I need to go return these things that I had borrowed, give these clothes to a friend. And they were all good things, but I wasn't thinking about how anxious I was that I ate granola or something. Okay. Which was, and then I would sort of later in the day, I'd kind of have this little light that would go off that would be like, something's wrong. And I'd be like, oh, what's wrong? What I think about? And then I'd be like, oh, I haven't panicked today. Which was, again, kind of a very strange feeling. I was like, oh, I haven't panicked about anything. I'd be like, oh, I haven't panicked, but also I haven't panicked. This is great. And this would usually be when I was driving in my car, which I also, I think I sold it to my sister or something. But yeah, it was great. And then these realizations would happen less and less, that I wasn't panicking until and until there was like a lion in front of me or something. I'd be like, oh, well, here's reason to panic. Eventually I just stopped panicking about things.
So what happened when you were in a lion like that? What did you start thinking differently somehow?
In terms of when I realized I wasn't panicking,
or in between, like like in that point where you started realizing that maybe a lion isn't a reason to panic.
Yeah, so I think it was. Well, yeah, it was that I was realizing that these things weren't reasons to panic, and also, it was just I could look at things more reasonably. I realized that I had so much more time to think about other things that I enjoyed when I wasn't panicking about stuff.
All right.
What was the other thing I was going to say? I just lost my train of thought.
Okay. That's interesting, because that's something that came up in an interview I did last week. My buddy was like, I realized that the more I was focusing on this big loss that I had, the more it was just a cost in my life. Mm-hmm. It's like I was wasting my time feeling bad about this and stopping myself progressing and enjoying things.
Yeah, exactly. I had a couple of moments as well where I would be. I had a lot of goodbyes to do, and I would often be like, oh, we'll meet at a coffee shop and have lunch or something like that. And I would often like see food coming to the table, and be like, oh, I'm so ready to panic. And then there was this feeling of like, oh, I'm bored of panicking. So again, I was like, these two different sides were there, being like, oh no, you've got to panic. And I'm just I can't be bothered panicking. Like I want to talk to my friend about this, or like, stop. And then I just like would be able to eat with I would be able to eat, but I didn't often take a lot of joy in eating during this time. That came later, but
okay.
there was not. I think that's just one of the steps that had to happen. I had to stop panicking, and just food had to become neutral.
Uh-huh.
It became only something that I needed to, and needed was a key word for me there. I needed it in order to think properly, in order to fuel myself. And at the same time as eating more meant that it was an unnoticeable amount of weight that I was putting on, but I noticed it because I would scrutinize myself. But that same feeling about like, oh, you need to panic about this, but like, oh, I can't be bothered panicking. Like I'm so bored of this panic would happen when I noticed that my body was changing. And again, something that happens with a lot of eating disorder patients, people, is that you like the symptoms of the disorder. So in the same way that when they're going away, you don't like that they're going away.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons,
they're comfortable, or
because they're comfortable, yeah. And I think this is common with a lot of people who suffer from anxiety. The feeling of anxiety is very comforting. It's very familiar. You know what's happening when you're feeling anxious. It's not pleasant.
Yes.
But you know it. So often taking a specific problem that I spoke to one of my lecturers about actually was that people don't like taking their anti-anxiety medication because it's so not feeling anxious is very unfamiliar to them.
Yes.
So yeah, those I didn't like that the symptoms were going away. But intellectually, because I was eating again and was able to think about things clearly and not so black and white, and I was able to kind of sit with myself and be like, okay, I'm feeling this, but I know that it will pass, and it's not rational, but it's there, and that's okay, and it will pass. Because my mind was being more nourished and I was eating things again, I was able to do that. I was able to just sit with the negative things that I was feeling and basically just sit with them until they stopped bothering me.
Can you describe that process a little of sitting with your negative feelings?
Okay, so it would be anxiety about a sandwich. I keep wanting to say freaking out about a sandwich that I had to eat. Maybe it was because I already ate bread that morning and I shouldn't do it again, or because someone was watching me and I didn't like to be watched when I was eating, or I'd eaten enough and I shouldn't be eating this sandwich. And I could just I just tell myself to like sit down, take a couple of deep breaths.
Down.
Yeah, literally sit down. It was very helpful for me. Actually take a couple of deep breaths.
Consciously.
And just, I would say, like, I feel anxious about this. I don't really want to eat this sandwich. And I'd say that, and I'd, again, wait for because I'd have these big waves of panic that would come up, and then they'd die down, and then I'd say the next thing to myself to be like, like, your body needs this food. And then like these other little thoughts would creep up. They'd be like, no, you don't. Like, you've already eaten today. It's terrible. And I'd wait for that to go. And again, like, I'd just be like, okay, you can take your time. This is okay. Like, you will feel anxious about this for a while, but that's okay. That's not a problem, because it's going to go away. And it would just be, I would just sit, and sometimes I would say those things to myself, or I would have other things, but other times I would just feel the fact that I was anxious, and I would be conscious of the fact that it would rise up in me, and I would panic, and maybe my face would go red, or I'd start, my hands would start shaking, and I would just wait for it to go, so that I could learn to tell myself that, like, these things come and they're unpleasant, but they also go.
Right.
Just wait for it to just be like, I'm feeling these bad feelings and it's okay. And I'm not going to do anything to harm myself in any way because of that. Whether that be like very negative talk that I was saying, or throwing the food away. That's what I mean by harm.
Yep.
But yeah, just to sit with it and actually feel it, instead of, I guess what the alternative would be to just fix it, like get the anxiety away by not eating that sandwich, or leaving the room or something like that, which I knew at that time wasn't helpful, because it was specifically about the food that I needed to be eating, that I needed to sit with that, and it needed to go. And that would also happen with things like I'd maybe as I was putting on a bit more weight, I would grow out of a pair of jeans or something, and that again would just make me, I'd be like, oh, the panic would come again, and I just I'd sit down and I'd just breathe, and I just wait for it to go, and be like, it's okay to feel this, and it's even better that it's like I know how to make it go away, and that's fine.
Yes, but where did you learn those skills? Because it's not like, I mean, they don't teach us that in primary school.
No, they definitely don't.
Or they don't yet. Maybe they will soon.
So, I don't actually know. I went through cognitive behavioral therapy as a teenager. but I don't specifically remember a technique like that being taught to me. It might have been there. It might have just been from listening to other people, or it could have. I mean, I do know that the feeling of anxiety coming and then waiting and letting it go, that was something that I learned just by. I was just sitting alone with myself.
Yeah, just observing.
Yeah, and it started just to make more sense. Something that I used to tell myself when I was a little kid was like, when does it ever not work out? And that was something, because I can't even remember exactly what it was that I was talking about, but I'd be like, if something didn't happen, then I want to be like, well, when does it ever not work out? Like, I'll get the thing that I want eventually, or that thing will happen, or I'll do that.
Yes.
But I think that maybe contributed to as well. It's like, I've never, yes. I've never died from being anxious.
Right. Okay, that's very important to remember.
Thus, I'm probably not going to die from being anxious again. And that was something that I would tell myself as well. I'd just be like, I've always, the anxiety has never stayed. It's always gone again. So what would be different this time? Like, it's going to go again.
Yes.
So I don't actually have a solid answer to that question. I don't know how I learned those things.
Okay. It's very interesting. It's almost like maybe at the point where you made the decision, well, like, I'm going to change my life. I'm going to be cooler about my emotions. That's like you just figured it out.
Yeah. And it might have helped as well that I had been studying this for a while and worked with people in mental health care.
Yes.
So
absolutely.
A lot of different things that I'm glad kind of amalgamated in my brain at that time, because they were very important.
Yeah. Okay. And then so you finally took the flight.
Yeah, I left, which was great. And I got to Bangkok, and the hostel that I stayed in, because I stayed in a hostel, I checked in, and they were cooking a communal dinner. I don't remember what day it was, but it was like, on this day, we all cook together and we eat together. And I had said to myself things about like pushing myself out of my comfort zone, which I think looks different for everyone at different stages of their life. But I was like, I need to challenge myself a little bit, because I was quite shy as well. But yeah, I came in and I was like, cooking food. I don't know how many calories are in it. I don't know who's watching me. They might make me drink alcohol. I don't know. I was so uncomfortable. And I was like, well, I went up like to my bed and I sat and I waited for the anxiety to go down. And I was like, this is exactly what I need to do. And this has happened at a perfect time too. I've just walked into this hostel. It's my first night in Thailand now. I went downstairs and helped them cook and like talked to some people, and ate this meal. And I noticed then that I wasn't anxious or uncomfortable about the feeling of being full, or like a little bit too full, which that was not something that was particularly good for me at the time. But I was just like, I forgot to stress about the feeling of being full.
Wow.
I forgot to stress about how much I ate and who was watching me.
Wow.
And again, I realized this in the morning, and I was like, you didn't stress about it. And I was like, I didn't stress about it. And also something that I approached that when I left Australia, I kind of like, I need to try everything. I want to have all the experiences.
Okay.
And that was, again, something that was new for me. And part of that was like, eating I remember seeing tamarinds, which are a fruit that are quite common. They're covered in sugar. And I was like, what are these? I have no idea. It's like, I need to try them to find out what they are, to have this experience. But to do that, I also need to eat them. And I did. And it was fine. I didn't care. Forgot about them later.
I love tamarind.
Yeah, they're delicious, aren't they? And also something that was kind of a challenge for me for a while is that I would have very strict eating, like times that I would eat when I was in Australia. And Thai people and people traveling in hostels it's not like, it's 7:00, we need to have dinner. You just kind of eat when you're hungry, or like someone's like, oh, let's meet at 9. And it's like, oh, but I have to eat at 7. I can't wait until 9 to eat. So I had to be like, okay, well, this is going to be fine. So I was able to also see examples of other people and how they approached food and eating and socializing that was not from home. Because people who I knew with and interacted with knew that I had disordered eating patterns and would be very careful of that. It's like my mom always knew that I needed to eat by this time, otherwise I'd get stressed. So that's just what she did. And it would never be like no one would ever tell me like, don't, like, you can wait another hour, or like, we're going to eat earlier, because they would be afraid of me not eating at, like, if I missed my 7 o'clock opportunity, then I wouldn't do it. But
so in a way, your friends and family, I mean, they were trying to help you, but they were also kind of enabling you.
Yes, exactly. And that, again, kind of ties into something that I believe to an extent, and again, I need to think about it for myself a little bit more, but like, I don't think that you can heal from things in the environment that made you sick. Because you said it exactly. It's like all of the people who I knew were enabling all of these behaviors, and I wasn't going to ask them to stop. They wouldn't. It just wasn't. I don't know. I don't think that's true in every case, that you can't heal in those places. But like for me, I knew that was true. I wasn't going to get better when I was at home.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And also there were so many other things that I needed to be thinking about, like the fact that I couldn't be just speaking English to everybody, that I couldn't read the signs, and I'd be like, oh God, I have to like have this map and figure out where I'm going, and like there's dangers on the streets, like a rat's going to run over my foot. All of these things are good. I think it's fantastic. I was like, oh, look at this castle that I'm seeing, or going into a museum, or trying these things, like drinking with a bunch of people who we can't understand, and just like not using verbal language to talk and still figuring out. There were just so many other things that I had to do, that eating would just come along with those things, as like I wouldn't need to think about it. It would just I'd either be like, oh, I feel hungry, and I'd buy something to eat, or someone would be like, oh, I've prepared a meal, here it is, or like share this cake with me or whatever. And it became just second nature to eat when I was hungry, stop when I was full. And also, again, talking again about the feeling of being too full, it took me maybe a few months to realize this, but like that's also normal. Like sometimes you can eat a whole packet of Oreos and feel sick, and you're not going to die from the anxiety. I was like, that is okay.
Yeah.
So I felt like
yeah, be free to guts.
Yeah. And also I was able to just kind of realize that my distinction between what is healthy and what is not healthy, it doesn't... The world doesn't revolve around what I think is healthy and not healthy.
Okay.
Because it was very important. Like very important that I would have I had to have vegetables with all of my meals. Because that was healthy. I wouldn't eat deep fried things, and the sugar was not good. Just all of these things that
some people call that like, well, I mean, depending on the extent, they call it orthorexia.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which was maybe not my biggest problem, but I definitely I was leaned towards that side a little bit more.
Yeah.
And also just looking at people who I'm like, you are a very healthy individual and you're eating a hamburger. And after you finish the hamburger, you still look like a perfectly healthy individual. It's like, maybe I'm not different. So I was able to experiment with myself a little bit to be like, all right, I'm going to eat these French fries and I'm going to see what happens. And then I would eat the French fries, and guess what happened?
Nothing.
Yeah. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
But yeah, I needed to be away from my home for this to happen. I don't think it could have happened in Melbourne. And that's also excellent because like I did return once last year, but I've not lived in Australia since, and I'm still good.
Fuck Australia.
Yeah, fuck Australia. The root of all eating disorders. No, I don't. Sorry.
Australia's great.
Yeah, it's definitely got its benefits.
Let's see. There's something I wonder about. So I think maybe like with all the work and doing a double degree and with the orthorexia as well, it's like you were putting a lot of pressure on yourself, like or like self-demanding personality, or it's called like auto-exigent, like the word from Spanish. So what extent do you think it was like environmental pressures, and what extent do you think it was pressure that you were putting on yourself that caused these problems?
Well, no one forced me to do all of these academic things.
Yeah.
That was just me. I almost want to say it was entirely myself putting the pressure on. Yeah, it was just me. I just wanted to do it very well in everything that I did. And failure was not an option. And I had to make up for any failures that I saw in other ways. So yeah, that was all me putting that pressure on. And I look back at that time and don't recognize this person, because I definitely don't do that now.
Right. So now what are your beliefs about success or about your standards for yourself? How do you see that? So
I am I'm finishing the psychology degree through an online university. It's an Australian one again. And I'm just taking one subject each semester because I know that pressure is not particularly good for me. If in the times that I have taken more than one, it's been, I've noticed that when I get stressed, I tend to be like, I just won't eat. Which I can identify that very early and be like, okay, well, why? No, it's not okay. Like, this will pass. But now I don't put those demands on myself, because finishing this degree is something that I want to do for myself. I don't know what exactly I will do with it at the end. But yeah, I realized that it was only me putting that pressure on myself. So why do I need to put more pressure on myself to finish it in a particular time? And in terms of, like, I think I just have a better understanding now that things come up in life that mean you can't put 100% into all of the things that you're doing, and you just have to do the best that you are capable of doing at that time. And that was something that I didn't know before. I thought I was able to be the best at everything constantly. But now I'm like, there have been assignments that I've done that I've got like not as well as I thought I was going to do. And it's fine. I don't worry about that. Like, I'm not happy about it, and I don't feel apathetic, but it's more, I'm just sort of like, okay, well, this is just an indication of how I'm going. And I can make changes and improvements based on...
It's just like information.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't feel the need to put pressures on myself as much. There are things that I have to do for my job, and I have responsibilities in my house and with my friends, but they're not, I don't feel like I'm being crushed under the weight of the world like I did earlier. I'm just, like, sometimes there are things that you need to do. That's fine, and you'll do them. I have to push myself to do them sometimes, but it's not, I don't crumble under the pressure or crumble under the expectation that I need to be perfect in doing them.
Yes. Well, it is interesting how you phrase that, the need to put pressure. So it's like double pressure. There's pressure to feel pressure.
Yeah. No one needs that.
Right. I mean, just one piece of pressure would be
is appropriate, and it's usually enough to get your ass out of the chair and do it.
Yes.
You don't need to pressure yourself on top of that.
Yeah. Well, here's another question. So, of course, I mean, you're in this wonderful position where you could leave Australia and start to travel the world. And not everybody is going to be in that position.
Exactly, yeah.
How do you think that they could use those lessons to somehow help them change their habits?
Mm-hmm. I realized earlier that I said that it's not possible, which now I'm debating in my head.
Well, it
I
definitely
think it
helps. I mean, this is why, with Alcoholics Anonymous and stuff, they're like, well, leave behind some of your friends, and this kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that thought process of just waiting until the anxiety left, and just sitting with all the things I was feeling and recognizing that it's fine. I think that is something that is very helpful and more people probably should learn to do. That is something that would have been helpful regardless of where I was. The thinking, I think that maybe taking a step back from all of the things that you're doing and evaluating what is actually useful, valuable, helpful, adding something positive to your life. And if there's something that is not, what can you do, if possible, what can you do to minimize that? Because sometimes we can't always just cut the things out that we don't like.
Sure.
But which in my case, it would have been just doing 1 degree instead of the 2. There was no point in me doing both of them. Sorry, repeat the question to me for a second.
Well, okay. What do you think people who can't necessarily leave their lives behind, how can they implement your lessons?
Again.
Or maybe how could they somehow take a break from their life or something, or what could they do? Yeah.
I mean, I'm a big fan of asking people for help. Which is something that I tried to do with this one doctor, but I definitely did not reach out to other friends or to my family or to just trusted people. When I had many resources available to me. But even if you only have a few people, I think that those people would be letting other people know that you're struggling is cathartic. And it also opens up channels for you to find the help that you need. So I think telling someone about what is going on, there are so many resources on the internet for numbers that you can call if you don't have a personal, or things that you can read if you don't have a person close to you that you can confide in and tell them that. But I think the most important thing for me was just being able to realize that all of these negative things were not permanent, and that they don't need to be there. They can, and it's not as easy as just being like, I'm not going to think sad thoughts today. I'm not going to be depressed today. It's more like, it's a very
bypassing.
Yeah. It's us recovering from an eating disorder, an anxiety disorder, is a slow process. But it's those taking pride and pleasure in those little steps, being like, oh, well, I did it today. I did it just now.
Yes.
And not putting the pressure on myself to be like, oh, I'm going to get rid of this disorder right now.
Right. If you do a little bit every day and take a moment and notice that, congratulate yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Having patience with yourself. I don't know. Yeah, the sitting and just recognizing that you're okay and you're safe and it's not you are not the anxiety or the negative feelings. They're something that happened to you, and they will leave. And I think that was important in recognizing that my life wasn't anxiety. It was just something that I experienced, and I was able to, once I recognized it was there, I learned how to deal with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know if
that's cool.
appropriate answer to that question.
No, that's good. Well, I really liked when you described that process of sitting with it. That was very descriptive, and I think people find that helpful. Yeah. I listened to Sam Harris, the neuroscientist. He has that app, Waking Up. It's very good for meditation. And one thing that he says so many times is like, notice the thought. The thought is there, and it goes.
Yeah.
Every thought does that, without exception.
100%. Yeah.
Which is amazing. That's so liberating.
It is. They're right. Liberating is exactly the word. Oh, brilliant. Yeah. Okay.
Cool. All right. Thanks, Georgia. Is there anything else you want to say?
No, I think that's it.
Yeah.
Talked a lot. There we go. I hope that someone finds this helpful.
I'm sure they will.
Good.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
A beautiful thought.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for coming along for the ride, for the adventure, the journey all the way to Bangkok and, well, eventually to Vietnam and then to Mexico. Well, so maybe those are parts of the story for another time. Thank you. And if you are experiencing some kind of mental anguish, maybe you're putting a lot of pressure on yourself and getting yourself into an awkward position where you feel like you need to do all kinds of things, creating obligations and need to feel pressure, or if you're experiencing some kind of eating disorder or having trouble, difficulty dealing with the kind of stress that results from an academic environment, maybe I can help. So I'm giving cognitive behavioral coaching. You can go on beautifulpodcast.com and you look in the header, it'll say CBT sessions, and you can come along with me and we go through this 4-step process, these 4 key questions that come from Jared Egan's The Skilled Helper, which the questions are, what's on your mind? What's the real challenge? What do you want? And how might you get it? And that's how we begin to formulate an action plan, trying to figure out what you really want out of life, how to move into a direction that is towards happiness, fulfillment, contentment, getting all the nice physical things that you want that will help you feel happy, and how to improve your relationships, work on building cognitive flexibility. Because a lot of the time, what happens is the reason that we can't get what we want is in some form we believe that we can't. Or sometimes it's that we have a belief which we think is good for us and maybe at one time served us, but now no longer serves us, or it's not accurate according to the reality that we're actually living in, a maladaptive belief, if you will. And when we bring those beliefs into the conscious mind, then suddenly we can start to change them, and we can start to analyze them and see if they really hold up in our present circumstances. And if not, maybe we can let them go and replace them with something else and begin to flow more closely with what's going on in reality. So if that sounds cool to you, head on over to beautifulpodcast.com. You look at the top in the header, it has there some links like the one for cognitive behavioral sessions with me. You can book a session, and most importantly, the one thing you absolutely must do today, have a good time. I'll talk to you soon.
You